Okay, Nassim, what are we doing here?
All right, well, you probably heard people say that anybody can take pretty pictures of pretty landscapes.
Okay,
right?
sure.
So I've got a challenge for you. What about you make a picture of a landscape in your home environment? When I say home environment, literally on this table. So I've got a couple of rules for you. Number one, it has to be this table, no other table.
Okay.
And number two, you have to use any supplies that you can find anywhere you want. It doesn't matter. You can go to a grocery store, you can go to Hobby Lobby, as long as your landscape looks realistic on a tabletop.
Okay.
Number three, you cannot use Photoshop. Because if you're going to use Photoshop, you're going to cheat your way out of this, and I don't like that.
All right, okay. That's reasonable.
Yeah, so if you use Lightroom, that's perfectly okay. And number four, you cannot use a printed image. Because if you're going to use a printed image, you're going to put some Milky Way behind your image or behind your tabletop, and it's just not going to be fair.
So I can't just download a stock photo of a tree and...
No,
okay,
no,
that makes sense. It's got to be realistic.
All right, so do you have any questions?
Yeah, okay. I got a couple questions. Am I allowed to draw or paint a background if I can't print out a photo?
Why not? I think that's perfectly fine because you're showing your creativity here.
I also have no drawing or painting skills, so it's, I might not even use that.
You asked, so if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine with me. I think as long as you use any of the things at your home, right, and you're not trying to copy-paste things from other images, I'm perfectly fine with any of that.
And then, do I have a budget?
Yes, I think you don't want to go out and buy a ton of stuff, right? So how about something like 50, maybe 75 bucks, just so that you're not going over the top with this project.
And then how do we judge whether I've succeeded or not?
All right, so what we're gonna do, and this is for our readers and viewers, if he's really successful at this and his tabletop landscape looks realistic, you're gonna hit that thumbs up.
Oh boy.
And if he sucks at this and it doesn't work out and it looks horrible, you're gonna go thumbs down.
All right.
Fair enough?
That seems fair.
All right, let's do it.
Let's see how it goes.
Good luck.
So I have a plan. I'd like to photograph a scene with some mountains in the background and a lake with a dock in the foreground. I'd also like this to be a nighttime photo with the Milky Way at the top, because I think the darker it is, the harder it's going to be to notice anything that looks out of place. I've already got my supplies, a couple packs of wood, 2 paintbrushes, paint, poster board, poster frame, and foam. Total cost was about $70, so I'm within the budget. And there you go. All right, I think that I'm ready to start building the landscape. I've already got 3 cameras set up, number 1, number 2, and then I've got my phone that's just recording a time lapse. And I'm going to start by building the lake. I think this is going to be one of the trickier parts, and I want to make sure that I get it right before going on to anything else. And that begins with using the picture frame that I bought and removing the glass. Okay, here we are. And what I'm thinking of doing here is using the glass on top of a layer of aluminum foil. I think that if the light is dark enough around it, it'll kind of act like a reflective surface that looks like a lake. It's kind of scuffed up. It's definitely not in peak condition. They actually glued it in, which I did not realize, and now I broke it. Okay. All right. That may not be successful. You know, I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier. I actually have a photo that I've got framed with decent quality acrylic on the front. I don't want to scratch that, but I also really want to succeed at this challenge. Much better. Okay, arts and crafts time. I'm gonna make the dock. I've got 2 different packages of wood to do that with. This one's just large rectangular pieces. These are much thinner, much smaller. So there, like that. I really only need 1, but they came in packs of 6, so it looks like Go Create earned more of my money. How's this? I don't know if this actually looks like a dock or not. You know, it's not unlike a dock. I think one of the things that really makes realism in something like this is going to be attention to detail. You can't just slap down the piece of wood with a piece of tin foil and expect it to look good. But I get the feeling that if I add enough pieces of wood to the dock, as if they're actual pieces of wood in real life, it will start to look like a real dock. Okay, that finishes up the dock. I'm going to use tape, though, instead of the hot glue gun. It's just a little bit less permanent. What I'd like to do next is just a proof of concept. I want to take a few sample photos, especially to see how the lighting looks in the foreground. I'll probably create some mountains really quickly out of just paper, throw up some random background. I don't know if this will actually look good, but that's not really my goal at the moment. I just want to see what looks realistic and what doesn't so that I know what to improve. I'm just going to use a couple of chairs as the background. Well, it's far from perfect, but I think that I've got a sense of where this is going. We'll see, but I'm optimistic. I'm not sure if this is exactly how I'll keep it, but I think it's a good start. I'm going to make the Milky Way now. And this is one where I have kind of an interesting idea. I've got big sheets of poster board that I'd like to poke a hole in, as many as possible to resemble the Milky Way. And then I'm going to shine one of my lights through the back of it so that it actually resembles the stars in the night sky. This is going to take a long time. There's a lot of stars in the night sky. To me, this is another time where attention to detail is going to win out. The more of these little guys that I create, the more realistic I think that it'll look. 3007, 3008, and 3009. Yeah, that looks actually really good to me. It was also super easy to make. It only took me like 5 minutes. And at the end of the day, I went with the black background instead of the white background just because the white one was letting too much light through when I tried it earlier. I don't know if I'll have to paint this and actually emphasize where the Milky Way is, but let's give it a shot. I'll set it up and take some test photos. And for now, I'm just going to use my phone to take a test photo, just to make sure that it looks good in the first place and that I don't need to redo this entire thing. And at the moment, it clearly doesn't look like an actual landscape, but it's really getting a lot closer. I can notice a few things that I'd like to change here. Number one, I don't think that the dock looks completely realistic. Maybe I need to add some more posts to it or something to make it look more realistic. And number two, the lake definitely needs a shore. At the moment, it just sort of blends right into the mountains in the background, and it looks pretty unnatural to me. Number three, the mountains are too big, I think, and they're also way too bright. They should definitely be one of the darker parts of the photo, except maybe little bits here and there that I want to act as snow. And that might sound like a lot of things to fix, but it's a start. I know where I'm going, and I think that once I make these changes, which shouldn't be too difficult, the photo's going to look much better. So what's next? I think that I'm going to keep working on the dock. I've got a couple ideas of how to improve it. I'd like to add railings on either side and posts as well. And I think that that'll make it look a little bit more like an actual dock. This one's very important too because viewers are going to see a lot of details in it. It's the only close element in this photo. So let's see how that goes. So I finished the dock, I like how it looks, and my next step is to build the shore of the lake. And the parts on the edge might not be visible in the frame, but certainly the part near where it meets the mountains will be. Before I paint it and make it the correct color, I'm just going to cut it out of these sheets of poster board. I still have a few left over. So get ready for another time lapse. It's not just the shore of the lake either. I also need to get rid of these paper mountains and replace them with a styrofoam mountain. That way I can sculpt it myself and make it look a little bit more how I want. And on top of that, I'd also like to have some nearby hills. I'm going to make them out of this sheet of paper, and I'd like to have one on each side. I'll paint them kind of dark. I think that that'll give this a little bit more realism. So I'm gonna get these out of the way. And all that I really want to do right now is paint the shore, both that and this, as well as the hill as dark as I can. I want them to be practically silhouettes in the photo, because that way people won't notice any incriminating details that show that it's not actually a real landscape. However, I do want to paint a little bit of snow on either side of this hill, just to give it a little bit more added realism. I've got one more of these left, which I'm going to use to protect the table and the plexiglass from getting paint on them. This is kind of a mess right now, but while the paint is drying, I'm going to start working on sculpting the mountain. So here's a problem with these foam things. They're bleeding like this tiny little shards of plastic that I really don't want to breathe in. I would rather just use the paper. It actually looked okay earlier. And I'm painting it before I fold it because I don't think that I'll be able to get all the little creases and valleys once I have successfully folded it into a decent mountain shape. Now, the one thing that I'm not going to paint yet is the snow, just because I don't think that I'll be able to have a good sense of where the snow should be until I've already folded up the mountain. But other than that, I've got the darker textures almost ready. Okay, just gotta wait for that to dry now. It's a brand new day, the paint is now dry, and the only thing that I really have left to do is build the mountains. Once I've done that, I'd like to take a couple of test photos so that I can see what areas I still need to fix. I'm sure that there's going to be something, so let's do it. I've mentioned a couple times that my favorite thing in the world when I was in 5th grade was making origami, and so those skills are finally coming to good use. I've been very happy with how that mountain looks, and the second one is also coming along pretty nicely. I'm nearly done with the setup at this point. I still need a few little odds and ends. I'm going to tape that down, move the mountains, but once I've done all that, I'm going to bring the Milky Way back in and start taking some more test photos. And I'm optimistic, but I guess we'll need to see whether there's still some elements here and there that make it look like a tabletop landscape rather than an actual landscape photo. I think this looks really cool. Okay, here's the final test image, and I'm starting to get a pretty good sense of what works and what doesn't work here. For starters, I don't really like how the railings on the dock look. That's a little unfortunate because I put a lot of time into them, but to me they kind of take away from that illusion of a real landscape photo. I'm not even sure if I can tell you why. They just don't quite look right to me. So I'm going to get rid of them, and I'll probably put some smaller railings on instead. Another thing that doesn't work for me is that I think the dock is too bright. I might be able to fix that with lighting, but if I can't, then I'll probably have to paint it a darker shade of brown. And then I also want to fix the hills in the foreground. I think that painting some snow on them will make them look a little bit more three-dimensional, but other than that, I'm actually quite happy with it, and I don't think that the remaining edits will take me that much time to make. At the moment, I'm just taking a bunch of variations. I'm changing the height of my camera, moving around the mountains. I just feel like something's got to work. Unless it doesn't. And believe it or not, it actually did work. Here's the final photo that I took. It really is cool to see the progression of photos too. Up until this final one, I don't think that they'd convince a lot of people that these are real landscape photos. As for the last one, I'm kind of surprised but also really happy because I think it actually looks pretty realistic. You can be the judge though. If you think that I beat the challenge, you can give the video a thumbs up, and if you don't think so, you can hit the thumbs down button. And just a little note, some people are probably wondering about my post-processing. Not gonna lie, I pushed Lightroom to the limit here. Lots of local adjustments. By the end, the software was moving really slowly, although it is Lightroom, so. Anyway, in the interest of full disclosure, here is the completely unedited photo. Definitely not as good as the final, no doubt about that, but every edit that I made, I did within Lightroom, so it all falls under the rules. And that is how you make a tabletop landscape.